All right, what up, party people? Thank you for coming to the second Sports Analytics Society basketball division meeting. Happy to have you guys here. Today, we're going to be talking about this season specifically of the NBA. We're going to be evaluating the season, talking about offense and defense, and looking at metrics for both of those things, as well as just some scoring numbers in general. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get started with that. All right. So everyone can see the screen? All right, cool. So like I said, we're going to be talking about evaluating the 2020 through 2021 NBA season, specifically offense and defense. So what we're going to be doing today specifically, first we're going to be looking at two different kinds of metrics used to evaluate offense and defense, those being offensive and defensive rating. After that, we're going to take a look at, we're going to apply those metrics and look at some record-breaking statistics that are going on this season, as well as just in the modern NBA in general, as well as individual scoring boom, like players are scoring more frequently these days. After that, we'll do a little discussion on why that's occurring in the modern NBA offenses and how they work. And then we'll just open up the floor to thoughts as well as some discussion on the All-Star game. So, yeah, let's get started.
Sorry. So, like Thomas said, we're going to talk about offensive and defensive rating. Offensive rating is calculated as the amount of points an NBA team scores per 100 possessions. And then conversely, defensive rating is how much they give up in those 100 possessions. So just to go a little bit more in depth on offensive rating, it, like I said, uses a team or measures a team's offensive performance. How that's done is you take the field goals attempted, subtract offensive rebounds from that, and add turnovers to that. And then you add 0.4 times the free throws attempted. Because of the possessions, because the possession can only end in one of three ways: an attempted field goal, turnover, or free throw. That's how those things are subtracted or added based on that. So then you would divide the team's total points scored for the season. And sorry, I'm really thrown off right now. So yeah, basically, we'll look later and see how those teams' offensive ratings are impacted based on how successful they are and how strong those offenses are. When looking at defensive rating now, the opposite is kind of calculated. So rather than adding offensive rebounds, we'll subtract those, and then we'll add the turnovers and the free throws as well. Or we'll calculate the total number of possessions, and then finally we'll go into some steps to calculate the defensive rating through the total number of possessions on there. Sorry, I did a terrible job explaining that, guys. But now we can look at the record-breaking seasons that we're having right now. So it's no surprise that the Brooklyn Nets have the highest offensive rating right now, being led by the three-headed monster of Durant, Harden, and Kyrie Irving, followed by the Utah Jazz, the league's best record, and then the Clippers and the Nuggets, as well as the Bucks. So those five teams together have five of the highest NBA offensive ratings in NBA history. Also on the list, you can see the Pelicans and the Trailblazers of this year to round out that list. But on the other side, we can see some all-time bad defensive ratings coming from this season. The Sacramento Kings having the highest defensive rating of all time, as well as the Pelicans on that list. So while we've had some great offensive performances this year, we've had some equally bad defensive performances from teams as well.
Nico, am I taking this one? I'm not gonna lie, I forget. Okay, I got it. All right. So watching the game these days, watching the NBA today, seems like sometimes it's easier than ever for an NBA player to go out and get a bucket. And honestly, that's because it is. NBA players are scoring like never before. back in the day, maybe 10, 15 years ago, if players scored 20 points, it would feel like they had a pretty good game. Nowadays, kind of feels that way for 30 points. You look at a box score, you see a player score 30 points, and it's still somewhat unremarkable. You think, oh, oh, he had a good game. So, and honestly, it feels like a new player will go for 40 points every other week. You look at a box score, you see, oh, this guy went for 40. And it's just not even a player who you would think, oh, is a superstar who can score that many points. So diving a little bit further into this, why don't we take a look at the top 10 league-wide scoring averages for NBA players 10 seasons ago, 5 seasons ago, and this season respectively. You can see 10 seasons ago, that's the 2011 through 2012 season. Kevin Durant led the NBA in scoring that year at 28.0 points per game, followed by Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Kevin Love, Russell Westbrook, so on and so forth. And Kevin Durant leading the league 28 per game, that's pretty solid. But going down, you see that it's a pretty steep decline once you get past about Kevin Love. Drops down to 23.6, 22, and the 10th highest scorer in the league scored only 21 points per game that year. Looking a bit further, 5 years later, 2015 through 2016, Steph Curry's MVP season. He headlined through the NBA with an average of 30.1 points per game. James Harden was not that far behind with 29. And looking down the rest of the list, you can see some other notable names that you probably recognize. And going down to Paul George at number 10, scoring 23. Still a good amount of points per game, but not nearly the amount that we're at today, which if you look at today, you got Bradley Beal right now, who's leading the NBA in scoring almost 33 points per game, which is very, very impressive. Not many players can score that many points, but even looking further down, you got 3, 4 other players scoring just close to 30 points a game, which is today seems normal, but you said that a few years ago, it seems astronomical. And going down to the end of the list, you got Trae Young at 26.2, which is 10th today, but pretty remarkable because if you put him in the 2011 season, he would be number 4. So as you can see, the progression of scoring throughout the years has greatly increased. Players are scoring like never before, averaging at more points than ever before. So, we want to take a look at this. Why is that happening? What is the cause of the scoring boom for players, not only stars or players in the top 10, but league wide, And the simple answer to that is that just, modern NBA offenses are built different. And what I mean by that is that there's a whole lot of things going on. So first and foremost, we'll start with spacing, analytics, and more threes. If you take a look at the 2 pictures on the right side of the screen, you're looking at on top, Miami Heat versus Dallas Mavericks. That's actually the NBA Finals in 2006. But if you take a look at the paint area, there are a lot of players packed in there. And if you look around, there's literally nobody outside the 3-point line, which, that leaves little for driving lanes, little for the player who I believe that's Dwayne Wade at the top. He can't really get to the rim too easily. Probably going to have to settle for a contested mid-range jumper, which, isn't the most efficient of shots. Now you look down below, we have a bit of an extreme version, but a version that's representative of the modern NBA nonetheless. We have the last year's Houston Rockets with Russell Westbrook up top. They were playing some 5-out basketball, which means that they had 5 3-point shooters on the court at all times. If you look at the paint area, it's completely open, leaving it open for driving lanes. And if possible, also kicking out to 3-point shooters. So with all that being said, because there's been such a recent revolution on 3-pointers today in the NBA, NBA teams are not only just taking more threes, but their offensive game plans are fully focused on creating open looks from behind the arc as well as at the rim. Another reason that offenses are so efficient and so potent today is the advent of positionless basketball. So basically what positionless basketball is that rather than forcing players to play the role of their position, like point guard being a passer, shooting guard being a scorer, there's far greater offensive freedom in today's game. NBA teams look to maximize the strengths of each of their players on the court. So, a player like Steph Curry, rather than just playing the point guard and having to be a passer, which he can do, but rather than having to be a passer, he can be a bit more of a combo guard. He can get his scoring down the floor, shooting threes, player like Kristaps Porzingis, who's 7'3", maybe in the 1990s or 2000s, he'd be relegated to a post role, posting up, trying to get scoring in the paint. But today, he's taking a lot of shots from behind the arc, which, if a player his size tried to do that a few years ago, he would probably get laughed at. Ben Simmons, 6'10", running the point guard, guarding 1 through 5. That type of thing didn't happen very often. And then also another player who you may or may not know, Bruce Brown of the Brooklyn Nets. As Nico said before, they got their three-headed monster with KD, Kyrie, and James Harden. So, that doesn't leave a lot of room for other scorers on the court. And a guy like Bruce Brown, who is 6'4", 6'5", naturally a shooting guard, instead of doing what normal shooting guards do, which is shoot the ball, try to spot it from beyond the three-point line, he actually plays like a center. He cuts to the rim. He doesn't shoot threes, and he's often a roll man in the pick and roll as well. Finally, increased offensive output is just natural considering the game is always moving forward. NBA offenses are forever evolving based on the past, learning from predecessors. You saw back in the day, people would, do things like James Harden. He has his step back three that he always uses. Players in the 1990s, 2000s, if they tried that, they would maybe get called for a travel, or they wouldn't really know how to use their footwork. So, and now you got players, all sorts of offensive players doing that today. So people always take what works and they add to their game, and offensive players these days are just far better than they were even 10 years ago. And of course, defense, because it's a reactionary skill, can only hope to catch up. But anyway, with all that being said, I know that was a lot. Now's our chance to open the floor, talk about what we think about offense today. Do you guys like the sort of all offense, no defense style of play? With analytics, there's not maybe as much post up or mid range, so we can talk about that. So yeah, let's have a discussion. And of course, slide or references there.
Yeah, I thought another thing that's really interesting is like the way that it's like refereed today, with like how everything's so soft. And I've seen a lot of people talking about like the pump fakes at the 3-point line and then jumping into people, and like how that's kind of just accepted now. And I feel like all the old time players are just saying that it needs to get back to like hard nosed basketball and stuff like that. So that's another thing that I would like to see, because that's kind of getting a little ridiculous.
Yeah, back in the Jordan era of basketball, a big thing was hand checking. And I think doing away with that has caused for a lot of these spread out offenses to come about. Also, in the early 2000s, they banned the use of, or rather they allowed the use of zone defenses, and then instituted the 3-second rule in the paint. That's also kind of another reason why now you see a lot of 5-out basketball, like Thomas was discussing.
Yeah, I also agree with you, Brad, with the way the game is officiated today. They allow for a lot more freedom for the offensive player. You see guys like James Harden, Trae Young, Luka Doncic. Even there was that viral image of Steph Curry the other night jumping into, I believe they're playing against the Lakers, so one of their defenders. And sometimes, guys, as they didn't back in the day, will try to get the most efficient shot, which is a free throw. So, they'll try to draw a foul and sometimes play the game in a way that maybe isn't considered real basketball. So that's tough, because you either got to change the rules to stop that, or you just got to keep letting defense get less and less effective,
Yeah. Adding to your free throws, I know one thing that with the two pictures you showed with the 2006 finals and then the Raptors Rockets game, one thing I noticed is with the timestamps, they're both like ending towards the third quarter. Now, I don't know if it's because the 2006 game was more of a blowout, but like if you saw the two scores, like it's a very clear difference. Like one was in the 90s and 80s, the other one was in the 50s and 70s. Like obviously the scores going up, but to the free throw point, I know a lot of guys have figured out where it's just as long as you can get a call, and if you just work on free throws more than any other shot in the game, then you can just get your quick points right there. And also the fact that like they're not timed, so you can just be patient while you're doing it. So guys have learned that like if you can just stay patient and then get a call, then free throws are the easiest way to get points.
Another thing about officiating is when you watch a guy go for a post up, he's going to take a lot more contact than a guy on the perimeter, and he might not even get anything called. While a perimeter player looking to create a shot, if you touch him while he's going up, it's probably going to be a foul. So that probably plays a role in kind of the depth of posting up.
I mean, honestly, players are taking advantage of this stuff too, though, because there's so much more flopping going on and stuff like that. And that's why they're now starting to have to give out fines to try and prevent people from flopping. So, I mean, honestly, on the refs, it's getting harder for them too, because now they got to start paying attention to that stuff. What do you guys think? Do you think a player who is skilled enough to manipulate the rules, like James Harden, and kind of force the refs into calling a foul, should that be rewarded? Should they make rules against that? Like, is it a cheap tactic, or is he just playing the game at a higher level?
For flops in general, like I think the fining is really to the extent of like if it's just obvious, like if you're not even trying that hard to sell it. But I know some guys where it's easy to obviously maneuver with the refs and make them think like, oh, he fouled. But because of replay, that's kind of where we know of a flop. But like I do think there's a certain point where it is selling the call. Like it's skill to do it as well. It's not just like, oh, they're lazy because they're flopping. Because like you want to manipulate it in a way where it takes skill to flop, and that's at some level, in my opinion.
I think with the guys like Harden, it's definitely a skill to draw fouls because, I mean, there's a difference between flopping and actually drawing contact. And what guys like Harden and guys who are elite that get into the line, they know how to position their arms and their bodies so that the defender either can't contest their shot or has to foul them. And that's definitely a skill that a defender has to learn to cope with.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a skill, but I feel like at the point where it's at now, it's getting to like the point where, like with the flopping, it's a lot of the times you just see them just not even attempting to take a shot, where it's just going out of the way just to see contact, which is like it's within the rules now, which so like I understand it now, but I feel like there's needs to be something done with the rules where it's like if you're just gonna pump fake at the 3-point line and then jump 3 feet forward, like there's nothing that defender can do to just not get into your airspace, and then you're just screwed at that point. So I feel like that's one thing that they can do.
Yeah, I think in the cases when like the offensive player initiates the contact, like, and they're purposely moving their body into someone, not just like, it's one thing to like position your arm in a way where the defender will slap it, or like even to an extent like hook it around so that you get hit when you're going up. But like if you're taking a shot that you wouldn't even normally take just because you're trying to draw a foul, like jump into someone, or like they're putting their arms out and you're ripping through, I think to an extent that is kind of cheap, but like you can't fault the players for doing that. You can only fault the refs for consistently calling it.
Yeah, and the thing about Harden is like there is a place in the rule book that allows him to do that. Like he's not doing anything illegal. He's just smart enough to recognize I can do this, so why not take advantage of that?
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, I think Harden's the exception, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't think there's anyone else that's even close to like the skill level that he does with drawing fouls. Because he like, when he gets a pick, if someone fights over the top, he like purposely hooks arms with them and then tries to shoot. And so in that case, it is a foul.
I remember last year, I don't remember the exact stat line but he had well over 40 points, I would say. And I want to say half of his points came just from the foul line. It's like he's taking 10 field goals a game, but he's taking 20 free throws. So
I think I know what game you're talking about. I only know this because I am like a huge James Harden fan. They played a game against the Spurs, and that was the game, if you remember, when he dunked the ball and it went in, but they didn't count it. He scored 50, and I think 22 of them were from free throws. Like, that is pretty ridiculous.
it's just something you're never gonna see again.
Yeah.
You've never seen before.
And that's what makes him so hard to guard too, because defenders are constantly thinking like, all right, well, I can't reach because it'll be a foul. So that gives him even more space to operate, like driving to the basket and so on.
Does him being a lefty also have anything to do with it? Like, do you think it's harder for them to guard lefties or?
I feel like probably it has something to do with it, just due to the fact that most players are right-handed, so you're just not used to it.
Another interesting thing, I know we spoke about how high scoring that game was in 2006 in comparison to that game last year. Looking at just team possessions per game. So this year, the highest team possession per game is the Washington Wizards. They average about 107 possessions per game. Going back just 10 years, it was the Sacramento Kings. They average under 100, just 98.6 possessions per game. So not only do you have these offensive outbursts because of like the scoring of the players, but just it's a faster paced game now than it was before. Is that something that you guys like seeing, or do you like those defensive battles like you would have gotten a few years ago?
I mean, with the way that the game's played now, I like high scoring better than I do low scoring, just from a viewer standpoint. But from the viewing as well, it has come to with free throws where if you get to the end of the game and it is that close, it's kind of hard to watch the last minute because the last minute turns into 15 minutes and it's just like every possession is a foul. Now, like I know it's strategy, and I know if you really think about it, it's completely reasonable to foul because obviously you have more of a chance to just get the ball back from a foul or like free throws than you do a shot itself. But I think from watching, I like high scoring better than low scoring, but the end of a game when you get a consistent free throws, it's kind of hard to watch that.
Yeah, I mean, free throw shooting, obviously, like you said, is a strategy, but how many times does that actually pay off for the team in the long run?
I'm just curious. You said the Wizards have the most possessions, right? Is it normally like that for because they're not very good, right? So is it
Right,
normally
yeah.
the worst teams have the most possessions, or?
So going back to last year, it was Minnesota, followed by New Orleans, and then Milwaukee. All of them had 108 possessions per game. And then the year before that, it was Atlanta with 108.3. So not a great team there either. So that's actually interesting that you make that point. I'm not sure if it's worse teams have.
Yeah, I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, I
Honestly.
don't know if it has to do with their skill level necessarily, or just their play style maybe. Because you have someone like Russell Westbrook on the Wizards now, Bradley Beal, who just they're getting shots off as soon as they can. Russell Westbrook's exploding to the basket. So maybe just who they are, how they play, and just getting as many shots as possible.
Yeah, I feel like it's more like just like play style and how their team's made up, because I was just like thinking about it in terms of like football. If you think about football, it's like a team that has like a high powered offense and a terrible defense, like there's going to be a ton of possessions. So like with basketball, if it's like a team can score in under like 7 seconds because they're just that good offensively and they're giving up a ton of points very quickly, then it's just, so it's more not like how good you are, it's just kind of like what you're good at versus bad at, I feel like.
Right, and the Wizards this year, letting up a ridiculous amount of points every night. So just as many possessions as they're getting, they're probably giving up an equal amount to the other team as well. Just getting these crazy end scores.
And it makes sense, like if the Wizards play bad defense, which I'm pretty sure they do play pretty horrible defense. Like if the team that's playing against them is scoring every time they go down the floor, they're going to get the ball back quicker, and so they're going to have more possessions on the offensive end. All right. Anyone have any final thoughts before we move on to talking about the All-Star game?
Yeah, I have 1 point just to add to that. So I just looked it up. Washington's allowing 119 points per game. So, I mean, it would make sense if they have just as many possessions if they're giving up that many points. So, that's all.
All right. So we didn't prepare anything for this part of the discussion, but nor did we look at really any statistics or anything like that, just loosely. But NBA All-Star, anyone you guys think deserved that didn't make it or anything like that?
One thing I've been seeing this year that I haven't seen years before when talking about all-star snubs is a lot of analysts are saying, okay, great, this player deserves it, or this player deserves it, but which player shouldn't have gotten it? So, one player that I think you can take off, and really it's the only player in my opinion. I think Ben Simmons got a spot, but I don't know if he necessarily deserved it over someone like a Trae Young, for example. So I think the Western Conference is pretty solid with everyone. But I think the Eastern Conference has some room for improvement.
Did they put in Sabonis or did he get snubbed? Because I think that he was a big snub if he didn't make it. I forget if he got put in. All right.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think because KD is not playing because he's hurt, and I think they gave him the spot that was open because of that. But I see your point, Nico, but I will, just for the sake of discussion, I will make a counterpoint. I think Ben Simmons, while he doesn't put up the phenomenal stat line, it's not as eye-catching as others, he is one of the best defensive players in the league. He can guard 1 through 5. Great passer, can rebound, can drive to the rim, would you entertain the argument that he, as the second most important player on the best team in the East, couldn't you say he should make it over a guy like either Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, who are both putting up good but not crazy stats on a team in the East who's decent? They're not a dominant team. They're just hovering about 500, and for them to have 2 All-Stars, I could see you giving the nod to one of them, but for the Celtics to have 2 All-Stars is did they deserve that?
Yeah, that's another interesting point you make. Do you think that team record should be involved in the All-Star selection process? Because a few years ago, you have a player like Devin Booker, who's not getting an All-Star look because he's on a bad team. And then even this year, you put him on a good team, he's putting up good numbers, and he doesn't get a look there. So how much do you think that team record should impact these All-Star selections?
With team record, I mean, this may be a little homer, but I'm from Charlotte, and so there were 2 straight years where Kemba was a starter in the East for the point guard position. I think it was him and Kyrie one year, and then another year was something else. But I know that when he was a starter, obviously the Hornets were a 12 seed in the East, and considering it's the weaker division, they weren't a great team overall. They're still looking in the lottery. But I know that some guys like Devin Booker last year, what was kind of efficient is the fact that he obviously can play offense phenomenal, but with this defense, it's a little yeah. But I know what I kind of consider is like when it comes to all-star voting, they kind of look at between the skill of offense and defense. I would say like around 70% of your offense is recognized and 30% of the defense, like a little bit over, like more than half and half, because obviously we're in an era where offense is better. But I've noticed where if guys are offensively great, if they don't make the All-Star game, then people will notice, like Devin Booker. But kind of back to the Ben Simmons thing, like he'll make the All-Star game. People will be like, what? He can't shoot. But he's of the 5 tools that you probably need of like points, assists, defense, like one-on-one and like team. Like he can do everything except for shoot. So it's just some of the stuff that's like unrecognized. So I think with the record, obviously it comes into play as if like every other award as well. Like the MVP typically goes to like best player on the best team, but like with all-star appearances, I don't think the record matters too much, but I do think like based on your offense, the fan vote, it's kind of biased towards that more than his record. The guys will look at people like, oh, he's getting 30 points a game, but he's shooting like 20%. But they'll notice the 30 points a game and be like, oh, then put him in the All-Star game. So I think like points is what affects people. But back to I got kind of off track, but back to the record. Like I don't think record's too big of a deal because I just know like guys like Trae Young and like last year he made it, and then guys like Kemba, like he's made it numerous times where the Hornets had a bad record. But yeah, that's what I have to think about that.
And then you even have Bradley Beal this year, who's putting up 32 on a horrible Wizards team, and he's named a starter. So
I think injuries also have something to do with the voting too, because I'm a Thunder fan, so Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's been playing really well for us, but he missed a solid 2 weeks. I think he's averaging like 25 points, like 6 assists, 6 rebounds. And like to me, those are all-star stats. I think those are some of the better stats than some of the guys that made it in the West. But he was hurt for, like I said, probably about 2 weeks. So it could be that, or it could be the record thing that you said, because they're not playing well. So
I think the thing going back to like the Ben Simmons, because I'm a Celtics fan, so I feel like I needed to defend my two JT and JB. I think the record shouldn't matter because it's more of an individual thing, first of all. And then I think also with the point of like him being more well-rounded with offense and defense, I think for the All-Star game, it really should be more kind of focused on offense because like the whole All-Star game, like no one really cares about the defense played in it. It's more of just like a offensive show. So it's like, I guess for the recognition, if you want to put it that way, it's kind of more like it should be like that. But I think for more just like the spectacle of like just going to the All-Star game, it's kind of like nobody want to watch like a 3-and-D guy out there in the All-Star game just trying to clamp up somebody when nobody else is trying. So it's like, I don't really feel like that's really that important.
yeah, in my opinion, I think you take the 24 best players in the league because that's what I think an all-star is. I think it's who are the best players, who's going to perform in the best game. And that's who the fans want to see. They want to see who's good out there. If you have a team with 0 wins, but you have someone averaging 30 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists, putting up triple-double numbers, but they don't have a single win, I think he gets a spot over like the second or third best player on an undefeated team.
That's another thing. Like, I feel like they should expand rosters. There are 30 teams in the league now, and I think it's 12 for each team, so 24 total. I feel like you should have enough room for, and it probably wouldn't work out this way, but enough room for at least one player from each team, so 15 spots per team.
yeah, that would be interesting if they did something like that, or if like only one person per team could make it. Then I feel like it would be a lot more competitive for people.
Yeah, I didn't mean it necessarily like that. It has to be one person from each team. Just, with the way it's set up right now, with the amount of talent we have in the NBA, like it's inevitable that great players on good teams or great players on bad teams, I guess just great players in general, are going to get snubbed. They're going to get left off. Like Trae Young is averaging, I want to say like 28 points, close to 9 assists. like that's incredible. And just the fact that they don't have a great record, like he's not even an all-star. So I don't know. I don't know if it's good for the league to not have a guy like that be an all-star, because like who wouldn't want to watch Trae Young in the all-star game bombing 30-footers? Like, dude's a beast.
Another player that I think was a huge snub, but again, like I said, the Western Conference is really tough because I really don't know anyone I would take off, either the starters or the reserves. I think DeMar DeRozan is not getting enough credit this year. I saw a statistic somewhere that the Spurs are the best team ever to not have an all-star, I believe. And it's like he's putting up, I think, career numbers this year. He's on a good team.
Wait, has he never made the All-Star game before?
No. I'm saying the Spurs team this year
Uh,
is the best, have the best record with no all-star. And yeah, he's putting up really good numbers. He's on a really good team, on a team that didn't make the playoffs last year, and people didn't think we're going to make the playoffs necessarily this year. And he's not getting all-star looks. So I think expanding the roster gives spots to these players who, like, the players who made it are deserving as well, but you have others who should get this recognition as well.
Totally agree with you there. They're, I think, the 5th seed in the West right now. And like the West itself is pretty stacked. So for him to be, I know he's averaging a career high in assists. I think he's close to like 7 or 8. And also at probably around close to 25 points, I think. Like he's also putting up great numbers and on a winning team in the arguably harder conference to win in. So it's like, how does he not make it? But also, who could he have made it over? Like you look at the West roster and it's like basically nobody.
Yeah, I think overall the players who made it deserve to make it, but it goes back to your point. I think you need more spots on there.
All right. Well, anyone got like another point they want to bring up or anything like that? Talk about like what do you okay, why don't you guys answer this question? Do you guys think that they should add more spots or is it good the way it is?
I think it's good how it is because then it leads to the whole like discussion of who should make it and who shouldn't. Because if you add more spots, then you'll get to the point where people will be like, wait, this guy actually made it? Like why do we add more spots? Like if we're gonna add more spots, why does this person get to make it? I think like where it is right now is fine because obviously you have other events that I think are a great idea, but the way that it works, like 3-point contest, dunk contest, great, but it's unfortunate how we're getting guys that just like it's either repetitive, like getting Aaron Gordon 3 years in a row and he still didn't get it, like he was just kind of a competitor there. But I mean, I like the events, but if they could get like if you wanted to add people to such events, I think those are the ones that you could do, like kind of outside of the NBA itself. But I really like how for the 3-point contest, they would add guys from both the G League and the WNBA to try to like include people to that. So I think that from the inclusive part is really good.
What do you think about the dunk contest participants this year? Because it's guys you really haven't heard of. And like I like how they're trying to get young guys involved. That's one thing that I noticed about the field. You have 2 rookies and Anthony Simmons, who's been in the league for a few years now. But yeah, what do you think of that?
With the inclusive part, I think that's really good. Like just trying to get the name out for some guys. Because for the 3-point contest, like getting Steph is good from a standpoint, like he hasn't been there in a while, so people will watch. But if you were to switch out guys like, I mean, I like the Celtics, but if you have both Tatum and Brown, like it's better to include more teams than it is to add 2 guys from the same team. So I think like if they got someone to substitute from like the G League. Like if they got the best shooter from the G League, or even if they went, obviously because of COVID, you can't do it right now, but if they went like overseas and got a guy to shoot in the 3-point contest, try to get recognition like global. I know Adam Silver's a big advocate for global, so it'd be cool if you got guys from more than just the NBA.
And with the dunk contest, I feel like the problem is that like no big stars want to do it anymore. It's kind of just to the point where it's like it's not even who they're selecting, it's just who's willing to just go out there and do it. So it's like I personally, it doesn't really matter to me having like a no name guy. If he's going to do a crazy dunk, I'll still think it's really cool and just good for the sport. But it's like you can't really, it's not really the NBA's. They're kind of, their hands are tied with, they can't get a big star that's willing to just go out there and do it.
Yeah, fans have been asking for 18 years to have LeBron James participate in one dunk contest, but you're just never going to get a player like that.
All right. Let's go final question. Who's your all-star MVP? I got mine. All right. So I based it off the fact that more often than not, it's a starter just because they play the most minutes, as well as I feel like it tends to be a guy who's usually an established star. And then with all that being said, and the fact that like, you know, contenders don't really take it seriously, my pick is Steph Curry. I think he's going to go off. I think he's on a team that isn't winning as much. So, you know, like he might try a little harder just because he's not worried about preserving. I mean, he is, but, you know, like, I don't know. I just think he's going to win it.
I would say for the East, maybe Beal. And if I had to choose West, maybe Lillard. I just think that they play kind of the same. Once they get hot, they like continuously shoot the ball.
I like the Lillard pick a lot. I do have bias because I just wrote an article on Damian Lillard, but I think he's performed well in our all-star games in the past, and he kind of has a chip on his shoulder this year, not being a starter. In the East, my pick is Jason Tatum, along the same lines of what Tom was just saying, not really on a competitor. But I think him getting the bump up to starter, he's going to want to kind of shine in that role. And I think he's going to play a good game there.
I'm gonna go a little wild card. I think it's gonna be Kyrie because I feel like just all-star games, he's always just like super flashy because he can just do crazy things with the basketball in his hand. So it's just he loves showing off, and I think he feels like he likes the attention basically. So I feel like he's gonna go out there and go crazy.
I got no picks, Tom. Sorry to disappoint. You're still muted, buddy.
I thought you were about to give us your pick. I was so hyped up to hear your opinion.
Honestly, haven't looked into it enough.
It's all good. Don't worry. All right. I mean, I think that just about wraps everything up. Nico, you got anything else?
Nothing else to add. Good meeting, guys. Good discussion. And look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.
One thing to add, though, before we close out, actually 2 things. So just checking the email. I remember last meeting we talked about the college basketball March Madness selection tournament, I guess put on by Purdue Sports Analytics. And I still haven't gotten an email yet about that. So I don't know. I think the deadline was like the 14th at midnight. So we'll send you guys an email if we do get an email back about that, like maybe next week. Then, oh well, it was cool to think we could do something like that. But yeah, we'll just keep you guys informed on that. And then also, are you guys good with us uploading this stuff into YouTube? Because I feel like we've been uploading as many things as we can. And speaker events, they usually don't like to upload stuff onto YouTube. And if any of you guys don't want to, perfectly fine. Just for anybody who misses the meeting. It's kind of good to have a little bit of a track record, I guess. So,
Yeah, honestly, I'm not cool with it. I don't want you to.
Thomas, you're out. You're done.
All right. Obviously do it if you guys are fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Dope.
Last thing for me, if you guys have any friends who like basketball, feel free to send them a link for next Wednesday. Just getting as many people in here as possible. We had a good discussion today. Just growing the group will only add to that. So.
All right. Well, great meeting, guys. It was good talking basketball with you as always. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.